What an introduction, Kimberly. Let me just thank you so much for that very spirited She the People introduction. But also, I just want to thank, where's Kimberly? I just want to thank you for really making our California more democratic and more inclusive and being such an unbelievable leader. Thank you so much. And to Aimee, my sister, listen, what a brilliant idea. And the timing is perfect. It gives those of us, all of us, so much inspiration, and it gives us what we need to keep moving forward to November and beyond. So give Aimee and the steering committee and Kimberly and everyone a round of applause. And I just want to say, I think Pramila had to leave, but let me tell you, Pramila has changed the conversation even in the Progressive Caucus. Even in the Progressive Caucus. She has been phenomenal. She's fighting for a rational national defense. She's fighting for our children, as you know, and our families, and she has really come to Congress and hit the ground running. And I know you're proud of her, but I just wanted to say to Pramila, and also to Deb, I know who was here earlier, and Rashida, I mean, what a difference this election is making for women and for families and for children around the country. So thank you all very much for inviting them today, but also for supporting them. And as Pramila said, we have so many phenomenal women running for the House of Representatives this year. So the power of women of color will help regain the soul of America. I am convinced of that. I am convinced of that. We're the backbones of our families and the foundation of our communities. And so not only are we smart, we do the work. The work of organizing, the work of activism, the work of running for office. So we are the face of this country, and we hold the power to enact change. All of you do, all of us do. Now, I was asked to speak today about courage and leadership. I can think of no greater example of courage than the late, great Shirley Chisholm. Shirley Chisholm, who was my mentor and encouraged me to get involved in politics. She was the first African-American woman elected to Congress 50 years ago. She was the first woman and the first African-American to mount a serious campaign for the presidency. Without Shirley Chisholm, there would not have been a Barack Obama as our first African-American president. Shirley Chisholm paved the way. Or Barbara Lee is the first African-American woman from Northern California elected to the California Assembly, Senate, and Congress. It wouldn't be. Shirley used to say, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. Well, we have brought our chairs and we are here to stay. It takes courage to break down racist and sexist barriers in politics. But guess what? Women of color are, and you know this, the most courageous people in the country. We are, and you know that. And so we must demand a seat at the table and stay there. Now, Kimberly mentioned cheerleading. I learned this lesson early on in terms of social justice, in terms of racial justice, as a teenager at San Fernando High School. Like many California girls, I wanted to be a cheerleader. But to be a cheerleader at San Fernando High School, you had to try out before a small selection committee. And the selection committee made sure that every cheerleader had blonde hair and blue eyes. And you see, that's not me. I remember thinking, now this is wrong. Young women, and I was 14 then, young women of color have just as much pride, talent, and ability as white girls. And we have a lot of soul. So I did what I knew in my heart was to be right. I stood up to the leadership of our school and demanded that the selection committee be disbanded. I went to the NAACP By then, I think I was 15, 14 and a half, 15. I went to the NAACP, this outside-inside strategy, that's how I learned. To help pressure the school to change the process. And it worked. We got a fair process for girls to try out before the student body. So I tried out, and I won. Now, that was my first election, and I became the first African-American cheerleader at San Fernando High School. Now, people at the time told me that it took courage to call out this injustice, but I thought it was just, I wanted to do this. But I didn't do it just for myself, because I knew it wasn't just for me. It was for creating opportunities for other girls of color. And that year, when I became cheerleader, we also elected our first Asian American cheerleader at San Fernando High, Jeannie Tanaka. That happened that first year. And then a Latina was elected. So that's what women of color do. We open doors so other women can walk through. That's what we do. But that lesson stayed with me when I went to school at Mills College, my undergraduate college, just across the bay. I was a young single mom on public assistance and food stamps at the time. I was active in the community, serving as president of the Black Student Union, volunteering with the Black Panther Party, Wakanda Forever, yes, and raising two phenomenal little boys, grown men now. My professor in our government class assigned us to do field work on a presidential campaign. It was George McGovern, Hubert Humphrey, and Ed Muskie. They were the candidates. And my mind was already made up. I was going to flunk this class. No way was I going to work for any of them. I never flunked a class in my life, but those men didn't represent the issues important to me as a Black single mother. Issues like childcare, public education, universal health care, and ending poverty. And then I met Shirley Chisholm. I invited Shirley Chisholm to Mills to address the BSU as the first African-American woman elected to Congress. Of course, I had no idea until she said it during her speech that she was, in fact, running for president. I couldn't believe it. Now, this was a candidate I could believe in. She was a champion for children and struggling families. She spoke fluent Spanish. She fought for the rights of immigrants. She stood up against racism and sexism and xenophobia. She opposed the war in Vietnam. She was doing what she knew to be right. And regardless of the criticism, and she took a lot. She was bold, she was courageous, and she was unbought and unbossed. That was Shirley Chisholm. As soon as she finished her speech, I rushed to her and told her about my assignment and offered to do anything I could to help her campaign. She told me she needed help in organizing in California. But when she asked me if I was registered to vote, I admitted that I was not. Yeah, I was a revolutionary. Still am, but I'm registered to vote. She was not pleased. She looked at me with a look that I will never forget. And she said, little girl, and I was in my 20s by then with these two little kids, but she still said, little girl, you can't change the system if you're on the outside just looking in. You've got to register to vote. So I registered to vote. I organized the Northern California campaign from my class at Mills College. I got an A in the class and went on to the convention in Miami as a Shirley Chisholm delegate. The rest is history, okay? That's what one woman did. So check this, I am the 20th African-American woman elected to Congress since the first Congress in 1791. Isn't that a shame? The 20th. But because of you, more African-American women and women of color will soon be in Congress next year to be our representative of she the people. More, many more. We will mark in November the 50th anniversary of Shirley Chisholm's courageous and historic election to Congress. Before Hillary Clinton ran for president, or Barack Obama ran for president, or the Reverend Jesse Jackson ran for president, there was Shirley Chisholm, okay? And when Shirley Chisholm ran for president, she started a movement that is still reverberating today in this very room. She showed us what was possible. She showed us what true courage and leadership was all about, because she understood something very fundamental, and that is that the laws and the rules of this country have stacked the deck against women and people of color. They were written to keep us down. And so we must become politically active, not to go along to get along, but to change the rules of the game. Change the rules of the game, and to fight for real systemic and institutional change. That's what she was about. So we must show up. It's our reproductive rights that are on the chopping block. When we show up, we will repeal the discriminatory Hyde Amendment. When we show up. It's our kids going to underfunded schools taught by overworked teachers if we don't show up. But when we show up, we will finally have universal preschool for all of our children, regardless of their zip code where they live. And we will crack that school-to-prison pipeline when we show up. If we don't show up, we will never see equal pay or true equality under the law for women. But when we show up, we will have paid family medical leave for everyone. And yes, we will protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid for our seniors when we show up. And so we need to elect women who won't back down, like all of you in this room today. We need to uplift the next generation of women like Shirley Chisholm did, like Patsy Mink. Patsy was the first Asian Pacific American woman elected to Congress and the author of Title IX. And Dolores Huerta, our icon, a leader in the struggle for economic justice and farm workers and for women of color. They all paved the way for me and for all of you. So changing the rules takes courage. It requires us to dig deep and believe in ourselves and who we are. Strong and brilliant and bold. Strong, brilliant, and bold women of color who will change the world, and we won't back down on who we are. You have the courage of your convictions, and you all are paving the way for the next generation of girls who will see themselves in you. This is generational. You are changing the face of politics and policy. You are changing the world. And so I want to thank you for being here today. And I want to thank you all for your courage and thank you for your leadership, because make no mistake, women of color, we are the blue wave. We are the blue wave. So take pride in that. Know your power. And come November, if we do our work, the world will see us. And our power, they'll see our power like they've never seen it before. So thank you all. Thank you, Aimee, again. Thank you, She the People. And as we say in my district, stay woke. Stay woke.